Okay, hello and welcome to the second of our partnerships with the Where's My Land Foundation to discuss the issue of black land theft in the United States, and hopefully to reach out to lawyers, activists who are out there who can help with our families ensure that they receive justice. We're going to have 4 families speak to us today about their experiences with land theft. We're going to start with the Hansberry family from Chicago, Illinois. Their land was stolen in part thanks to the Federal Housing Act of 1949, which sanctioned the theft of their properties. And then we're going to have the Dye family speak to us. They're from Desha County, Arkansas, and a timber company, along with the legal system, has stolen their land from them. And so after we've heard from those 2 families, we're going to take a sort of brief pause, switch out, and have the Jones family and the Keene family speak to us, and I'll introduce them shortly. Okay, so I want to now hand over to the CEO, director of, founder of Where's My Land, a real activist for justice and reparations in the United States. We're really excited to have her here, Ms. Kevon Ward.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and for tuning in. Thank you to the families who were able to make it out here despite the weather. And thank you to Loyola Law School for hosting this panel for us. My name is Kevon Ward. I am the founder and CEO of Justice for Bruce's Beach and Where's My Land. Most of you might know that I'm responsible for the land being returned back to the Bruce family last year. And as a result of that activism, we were reached out to by about now 700 families across the country, asking us to help them in their advocacy to get their land back, and to get financial restitution for what was done to them and to their families and to their ancestors. Today we're going to focus on 4 national claims we're working with. We're going to start with Mamie and Tay Hansberry, family members of Lorraine Hansberry. Their land, several pieces of land, was taken from Mamie's father, Carl Hansberry. And so they're here to just give their testimonies, to just let you know what happened and to ask for help. Right now, these families need help with legal representation, pro bono or on a contingency fee basis. So if your heart feels compelled to be a part of land reclamation, social justice, land justice, please reach out and help. And I'm going to call up Mamie, who will be 100 in April. Wow. And Tay Hansberry. You guys can sit there if you want to give your testimony.
Okay, right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Tay Hansberry. This is my grandmother, Mamie Hansberry. Mamie is Lorraine Hansberry's sister. Lorraine was her baby sister. And we're here to talk about not only Carl's land, but it was also Mamie's land. So she is an actual person who had land removed from our family. So I basically started this journey a couple years ago. I've been hearing my whole life about, all the properties that my great-grandfather had and that my grandmother had and how they grew up, and, kind of like it started getting me to think about the generational wealth that we don't have right now. And I'm like, wait a second, where did all that go? And I heard bits and pieces, and then I really said, I want to find out. And I asked for Mamie's blessing. Her name is Mamie, and she's my grandmother, but I call her by her first name. I'm not sure how that transpired, but I think when I was a baby, just so you know, when I talk about Mamie, it's my grandmother. So, I asked for her blessing to kind of look into it as much as I could, and quickly took a trip to Chicago and quickly found out that it was going to be a lot harder than just walking on into the courtroom and or courthouse and figuring it out. And that's when I met Kavan about 2 years into me thinking about this. So I'm gonna let Mamie speak mostly about how the land was taken. I think the way ours was taken was maybe a little different than other families, not really sure, but I'll let you speak maybe about before and then after.
First I want to say I'm very glad to be here to represent my parents and brothers and sister. I wasn't ever sure this would happen. When property is gone, it's gone. But my granddaughter started asking me questions, and it brought many memories back, hard memories. When your parents have worked hard, and I go back almost 100 years, and my parents were concerned about the people coming out of slavery. And they had no money and nowhere to live. So that was the main function of my parents, to provide housing for all the people that were coming in from the South. They had been picking cotton and, all the things they were first forced to do free of charge. Daddy was from Mississippi. My mother was from Tennessee. And they were well aware of the tragedies that took place in the Deep South. Daddy wanted to provide housing for the blacks who had gotten rid of King Cotton by simply walking away. That ended that harm. But then they had nowhere to go. They started going to Chicago, and members of my family would meet them at the train station and give them a little note saying, the Hansberries have kitchenettes and affordable housing. And that was the pride and joy of our family. Of course, we had to make adjustments on that housing. It was very good properties, very well-to-do people had lived in the 39th Street area and built lovely homes there. So when the opportunity came, that was a good thing because those properties were well built, and all we had to do was decide how to utilize them by subdividing, and that required a certain type of structure, third floors or some 4 floors. And we had to decide, or Daddy had to decide, how to cut them up. They had to be off the hall, and then he could make 1, 2, and 3 units of that he did some plumbing. We hired excellent plumbers and help, and subdivided them into 1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms, and providing a kitchen on the hall that everyone could use, and give some privacy to the tenants themselves. And we also provided some social services. If a child's parent was sick, we saw that that child got to school, because Booker T. Washington said, education, education. And so that was important to us, that children got to school, they got to the hospital if they need be, and the parents couldn't take them or couldn't leave their job. It was our thought to create a home-like family situation. And we ask our tenants, if you see something wrong, fix it. If someone needs something, get it for them, or call the office and let us know that something is wrong here, and we'll fix it. There were housekeepers in each building that were dedicated people who we practically I stood there and watched my mother hire a young man at 5330 Calumet. She said, "Do you want a job?" And he said, "Sure." And he turned out to be one of our best housekeepers, just off the street in that day. Of course, it's different today. Take a chance. But I want to thank you for inviting my family here. When it happened, you don't think, all you think is trying to get away safely. Because they not only want your property, they want you X'd out too. So we were very aware of that, and I was particularly surrounded by police outside our apartment building on High Park. And but the Hansberries are, we know how to do things. When the chips are down, we make a way.
Thank you.
And we recover.
Do you want me to speak a little bit about how?
All right.
So, thank you, Mamie.
Thank you, Mamie.
Every time I hear Mamie speak, just a little bit on, what we know, how the land was taken and the different properties were taken. My great-grandfather, Carl, there's a famous case, Hansberry versus Lee, where he bought a property in a white neighborhood and basically took that case to the Supreme Court and won, opening up housing on the south side of Chicago to 500 black families, making him a target. He also, took various businesses in the city of Chicago to court a lot to open and desegregate places, and this made him a target. So in return, his buildings were fined, like astronomical for the time, fines, and upon those fines, it was basically told to banks and insurance companies, don't loan money, don't insure these properties. So then the properties, my grandmother and her family, they kept using their own money, and eventually you can't do that. So the properties were then taken and we believe auctioned off, and my grandmother had to flee to California with my mom. My mom was 6. So when I learned that there's a possibility to either get some of the properties back, get some type of financial restitution for that, get some type of justice for that for my family, And the, again, generational wealth that was completely taken, I knew that there had to be something that I could do. Mamie lived a very, 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 you know, a lot of people, there's this idea that Black people, like, we're not well-to-do people and we're always, like, destitute. And Mamie and my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother and her brothers and sisters were very well-to-do, affluent Black people, and that was just stripped from her, and then from my mom, from myself, from her nieces, nephews. So with the help of Where's My Land, we're hoping to definitely get some of the properties back, but also be repaid financially for the years of loss of income and generational wealth and lack of people being able to go to college and all the things that come with, you know, with being an entrepreneur in America. So.
Well said. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
And thank you guys so much.
Now I want to give the Roosevelt Dye family a chance, or Roosevelt Dye himself a chance to give his testimony and tell us what happened to him.
Okay. This is the Dye story. My name is Roosevelt Dye. This land came through a will. Mr. James Marshall. In 1970, when I was a teenager, I was got to know Mr. Marshall he was from Lake Village, and he moved down to where I was living. And so I grew up around him, and you know, in 1985, he had some sickness. I became his caretaker from 1985 till he passed away in 2000. I had power of attorney and last will and testament for medical reasons. Years later, I was informed that James had some land. Once I researched it and confirmed it, I began the legal process to gain ownership of the land. The first thing I did was acquire the title. Once I acquired the title, the probate judge named me the executive of the land. I paid the delinquent taxes. After paying the delinquent taxes, they took the land off the book at DeShay County Courthouse. This is when the struggle, corruption, and outright theft of my land began. For the last 20 plus years, I've been fighting Anderson Tully Timber Company in DeShay County Court for my land. I did everything legally to obtain my land through the court system. It was like David fighting Goliath. I was disrespected, mistreated, bullied because of my economical situation. I was told I was a liar. I researched lawyer after lawyer, surveyor after surveyor, but no one wanted to go against Anderson Tully Timber Company. During the last 20 plus years, my family and I have been deprived of monetary losses, the ability to create generational wealth, and so much more. This journey has been physically, mentally, and spiritually draining. There have been many of days where I wanted to throw in the towel and just give up. But when I think about legacy and what I wanted to leave for my family, it inspired me to keep praying, fighting, and having faith that justice will prevail. I leaned on my family more and more as time went by. And my brother introduced me to Where Is My Land? That was a godsend. And after researching and having a conversation with them, I now have hope. So I'm thankful to her.
My name is Leslie Thomas, and I'm Roosevelt's daughter. My daddy didn't mention that it's approximately 200 acres that he's fighting for.
Pretty lot.
We've been trying to, he's been through many surveyors. I mean, everybody that he's called, they always turned their back on him. And, you know, we need to get the land surveyed because we believe there could be more land than just 200 acres.
Yeah, it's probably about 1,000 acres up there because Mr. Marshall owns section 31. And plus 30 is right behind it. Some of it fell in the river. So that land that fell in the river, it got washed away. But the other land, they give it to the person that up Nate. So James should have got maybe a couple hundred acres from that. So we think he got around 1,000 acres of ground. But they won't allow us to survey it.
No surveyor.
1,000 acres of land.
That's really-
Imagine that.
Yeah, that's when they fighting, so they wouldn't fight like that for 200 acres. But James got more than 200 acres. When I was doing the research and I went in DeShay County Court, it had up on the wall, section 31,
James Marsh.
H.J. Marsh. The whole thing blown to him. And they know all of this, but they won't let me survey. I've been trying to survey ever since this started up. We've been doing this about 32 years, I think.
Been hunting off the land.
They hunt off it, lease it, cut the
Lease it,
timber.
yeah.
They still doing that.
Yeah.
And we trying to break through, but we hadn't been able to break through, but we done came a long way.
They also told my father that if he would go out to the property, they would have him arrested, you know, so.
Arrested on his own land. And can you remind us of who's responsible for taking your family's land, taking your land?
Anderson Tucker,
Anderson
Company.
Tully Timber Company.
Timber Company, Anderson Tucker. He had land right beside James.
Anderson Tully Timber Company. Thank you all so much. We're going to come back for ask you questions in a little bit, but we want to invite the next two families down, the Jones family and the Keene family down, to give your testimony. So if you can make your way to the table, that'll be great. Mamie, you stay here. I'm gonna get up. Okay. Are there enough chairs? Come on. Can I see your name? No, I meant for register.
Take it home.
Yes.
Okay, so first I'd like to invite the Jones family to give their testimony.
Yes, I'm Michael Jones, and this is my sister Brenda. We're the youngest of our father, which his land was taken by eminent domain. At first, when we had the land, my mom and father, they wasn't worried about anything. And we always had a well that was very valuable to the family. And my dad always told my older brothers that this is something that you guys are gonna be wealthy of, along with this land. So when they came out, the city of Huntsville came out in 1953. I have a clip where they came out is dated Sunday, 1953, on the Sunday. They came out and drilled into our well. And they said the well pumped water at a rate of 260 gallons a minute. And they had a geologist out there, a U.S. geologist, saying this. They had the city engineer out there and said it was the best well ever. And they pumped it a whole day, and they say they pumped it a whole day, and it pumped 400,000 gallons a day. This is our Father's well. But they said that they were going to negotiate to the landowner in this clip. And they said the landowner was Willie Jones. But how do you negotiate with somebody without an attorney? They did offer $900 for this well in '54, but we didn't take it. So they came back in '58 and condemned the property, but they didn't pay our father. They staged our father and mother out 20 miles from the property as they took our property. We were only kids, the 6 of us. We were just kids. I was just an 8 months old baby. So at that time, we didn't have mail coming. The mail was coming to the residence where the well was and our property. When the person that staged us out there, he was the chief land acquisitioner for the city. So there was some fraud going on here, conspiracies, lies, deceit. To get my father out that many miles away from his home, I think was racist. Because a black man having a well in the South, and that's Alabama, they didn't want our father to have that type of generational wealth, and we didn't get it. So when we found out in the 90s by our dad's stepdaughter, we began our research. We turned the courthouse over and under and found our ancestors. They had 64 acres in 1870. 64 acres in 1870. They were legislators at the state capitol. My great-great-grandfather and his brother. Let me say that again, audience. Legislators. They made laws for the community that thrust us into poverty. For the community that thrust us into poverty. So we did everything we could with documentation. We documented. I have a document here that submits our family into books. It's a Freedmen's Savings Trust that the U.S. federal government started for African Americans after the Civil War. Their names are submitted in this book, and they don't know who Willie Jones was. So we compiled every document we could, and we made copies of every document, even handwriting. The handwriting was fraud. We sent it to a handwriting specialist in Nashville, and she wrote us back and said, this is totally fraud. So we did everything in our power as far as document, but after that, no one would help us in Alabama. We went certain parts of Alabama, they wouldn't help us. Because the property now is a university is on the property. University of UAH is sitting there with our well on the property. So we contacted Where's My Land? Our grandkids, they contact them with their savages on YouTube and Instagram. We were down and trodden. We didn't know what to do next because we had families in the 90s. We couldn't shell out money to these lawyers that was actually just taking it from us and wasn't doing anything. We couldn't get any help. But the hope came when our ancestors spoke to our grandkids and they found Kavan and her great team of Where's My Land.
Amen.
And ever since, we've had hope. But we're asking for help. We're asking for help from anybody that wants to help us. For all our families here today, not just us. We're asking for the whole families as one. We're asking this great university with its great professors and great men and women of law, we're asking for help. We've lost a lot of generational wealth. We still live paycheck to paycheck. Our ancestors gave the first home on our property to an educator. His name was William Harper Council, to start a school for African Americans. And he went on to start Alabama A&M University. We had all of that. My sister's gonna tell you a little bit about the horrificness that plunged us when we were plunged into poverty.
Hello, everyone. It's just amazing, and it's a great opportunity to be here with everyone that's had the same goal in mind, and that is to regain our property and to regain our generational wealth for our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids. I don't know about you all, but I got 24 grandkids. Depending on me, I may not look at y'all. Go ahead and say I don't. Go ahead. Say I don't look like I'm 65 years old sitting up here. But anyway, some of the horrific times that we had, you know, like this dear sister said here, you know, there were good times, but there was mostly bad times. And when she said that they would not only take your land, they will take you. And they tried to take me and my siblings, but by the grace of God, we're still here. We are the babies. I'm 65, and this is my baby brother right here. Don't he look good too, y'all? He's 62 years old as well. But we fought, and we stayed together. Our father kept us together. They tried to separate us. They tried to kill us to the point of times when we did not have food, y'all. I don't know if anybody know how that feels, but I do. We do. We sometimes we were like a military family, y'all. We was thrown into such starvation times that we had to move 8 times. Who does that? Who does that? But because of the poverty that we were thrown into, we moved that many times, and each house that we were thrown into, it was worse than the others. I don't know if you all know, but there were times, and I'm gonna say it because it has to be said, there were times when we had holes in our roofs that we had to put buckets, cans to catch the water. There were snakes at times in these houses. There were times when we had to come down from the houses that we live on a hill to go down in a stream to catch water where dead animals had to come. There were times when we had to eat food that was called walnuts, hickory-nuts, green grass. That's what poverty and taking of our land did for the Jones family. But we're still here, and we're gonna fight until we cannot fight anymore. So thanks be to God. Thanks be to Where's My Land and Kavod and her team. We're gonna keep on fighting until the last Jones and the last Hansons and the last Dye and whoever else land has been taken away. We're gonna fight until we can't fight anymore. In the name of Jesus, amen. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'd like to invite the next family to give their testimony. Thank you.
My name is David Cannon, and I'm a descendant of Eli Keene, which our story is basically about, is the Keene family. What drew me or sparked my interest more so than anything else was the legal aspects of this story, in that how amazing it was that a land theft as large as this was, we're talking about thousands of acres, was basically stolen from the Keene family, which was left to them in a will by their father, Eli. And again, I say, what was amazing to me was the legal aspect, going all the way back to the start of this country with the United States Constitution, which there's areas in the Constitution that prohibit, the founders specifically prohibited these kinds of thefts. The prohibitors always start off in the Constitution about no state can pass a law that, or no state can authorize the passage of a law that basically steals the properties from the owners. And it addresses specifically inheritance. The Article 1, Section 9 and 10 of the Constitution, Article.
Want to tell them the story first? What actually happened?
Well, I was going to let you do that, but what actually happened was that my great-great-grandfather was a white man, and my great-great-grandmother was a black woman. And they came together and started a family that produced, I think it was 8 children. And of the 8 children, each one of them worked. This is over a 50-year period of time. Each one of them worked blood, sweat, and tears on this estate, very large estate. And to have it taken away from them, the oldest one of their children, when this land was taken away from him, he was born into slavery, but there was the Emancipation Proclamation, and he became a free person, cultivated this land, developed it, and was in his mid-50s, late 50s, when this land was taken away from him, and he and his siblings were basically left penniless. And they had to migrate. This occurred in the state of Missouri. They had to migrate to Illinois and start all over again. I do remember my great-grandfather and my grandfather. Both of them were hardworking but very poor people, and they had descended from a very wealthy family, but due to this land theft, which was perpetrated by a lady that the children of my great-great-grandfather had no knowledge of until he was on his deathbed, and she showed up claiming to be his wife, moving my great-great-grandmother, who was the black woman, out of the position. And basically the state got behind this white woman in assisting her to move my grandmother out of the position of being married to my great-great-grandfather, which ultimately came down to the fact that the children of the of my great-great-grandfather were not considered legal, and so they were not capable of inheriting.
So you mind if I tell them a little bit of it?
I'll let you take over from here.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Karen Scott. I'm also a descendant of Phoebe and Eli Keene. We're from different branches of the children. He's from Mark Keene, and I'm from Reason, the second oldest child of Phoebe and Eli Keene. They came together in 1850. Eli Jr. actually purchased Phoebe and her daughter Martha, and he brought them to Missouri, St. Charles County, and set them up in a home, very nice home, and I do have pictures of the home. It's still standing now. Actually, it was sold 2 years ago, and beautiful home. Anyway, set them up, and he had 8 more children with Phoebe, and everyone in the neighborhood, they were all farmers basically, but they actually called them husband and wife. They knew they were together as husband and wife, raising their children for, like he said, 50 years. And in 1883, for whatever reason, we don't know for sure, but Eli went back to West Virginia where he had property, and he married his second cousin, according to Sophronia. That's the second cousin. But they never lived together. She found out he had this black family, and she went back to West Virginia and never came back. So for the 20 years that they were supposed to be married, they were not together. Eli lived in Missouri with his black family, and she stayed in West Virginia with her family there. And it wasn't until Phoebe died in 1896, and he had actually deeded property to Phoebe and her daughters, and he did not deed the property of his sons to them, but he left them the property in his will. He names every single child. He also names Sophronia as having property in West Virginia, and then she gets a farm up in 100 acres in Missouri. That's all she was supposed to have for her lifetime. And once she passed away, it was supposed to go back to her children, his children. She never had children. So to his children, they were supposed to get the entire thing. Well, when he was on his deathbed in 1901, she was told to come up. She came up from West Virginia, threw the kids out. They were taking care of their dad. He had lived with Reason for a long time since he had become ill. And she threw them out, took over, act like she didn't know who they were, said they were the maids and helpers or whatever, act like she didn't know who the children were. But she had already met them because she went back to West Virginia earlier in 1883. So anyway, and it's all in, I have a packet here with every newspaper article, every obituary. I have the original will in here. The original will is 17 pages, but it's very interesting to read what Eli left to his beloved children, and it says forever and ever. Anyway, she was angry enough to want to take everything. She didn't want to just have the property and the well down in West Virginia. She wanted everything the mulatto children had. So she took them to court, and of course the court sided with her and took everything, thousands of acres from them. They had homes on those acreage. She took all of that. So they ended up across the Mississippi River in Alton, Illinois, and had to start all over. You know, they were still farmers. That's all they knew. They were raised in farmland, and they were very wealthy. And I have pictures to show what they looked like before everything was taken from them. And before it was over, all I ever heard was that they ended up being, the men, drunkards. They drank a lot. You know, they were depressed. Because, I mean, imagine having all this wealth, growing up all this time with your father. You're going around the county. You're helping him with all the property. You're collecting rent from other farmers. In doing all the business, they knew the business that he had, and they helped support him and to have it taken. They were very depressed. So,
I would like to just add that in this will, there is what I call a poison pill that says that should this will be challenged,
contested.
protested, that Sophia, the white lady, was to be forgotten about. Everything that he left her in this will was to go to the children. And due to the time she threw the dice with insurance that she would win, which she did, and ended up with everything, as if this will did not exist.
And the sad part is, when she died in 1917, she didn't leave a will. But guess who came and got everything? Her nieces and nephews from West Virginia. They didn't give it to the children at all. They didn't get anything.
Well, we just have a few minutes, although if there isn't a class coming in after, we can go longer. And so I just want to say on behalf of Loyola Law School, it's been such a privilege to have you come visit our campus and host you here. I know that some of our students are working with the Jones family, is that right? Through Kanoa Miller? No, not them? Okay, different. Okay, sorry. But I know that some of our students are working through this Where's My Land with families, and I can't stress enough that there are opportunities for lawyers, students out there to get involved in this really important work. You know, a constant theme that we heard last week and again this week is how deeply ingrained the legal system is, not with helping, but with depriving people of their property and their rights. And it's really incumbent on us as lawyers to try and right some of these wrongs. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes.
What's being done about the statute of limitations? Has it been open?
So what's being done about the statute of limitations? In which?
In all the cases.
In all the cases. Do any of you have any? Again,
My attraction to this situation and all these situations is legal, somewhat dealing with statutes of limitations. And I've got a lot of different responses when I asked that question of legal people. And I have a handout which I'd like to pass out afterwards that addresses some of my research in looking into the statute of limitations on these types of situations. I think that will start to answer your question, but it's very up in the air.
So at this point, Congress has not passed any law.
So in terms of Congress, no, they are not doing anything. Is that right?
No, Congress has not done anything around statute of limitation, which is why we're working on language and policy to produce the people in Congress to change laws around the statute of limitation.
Has anybody approached the Black Caucus?
So, I'm sorry, say that again?
Have you?
Anyone approached the Black Caucus?
So has anyone approached the Black Caucus?
We are working on creating the language right now, and then that is one of our goals, is to focus on the Congressional Black Caucus, yes.
And so just in general, so I've had a little bit of experience of this working with the Tulsa race massacre. And what happens is different Congress people take different issues as their charge and develop language piecemeal instead of comprehensively. And so that is a big challenge for us, is to try and pressure Congress to do the right thing and find ways of waiving the statute of limitations. You can do it on a state-by-state basis as well. California's done it piecemeal, but they haven't done it for black property, and so they've done it for different groups, but not especially for black land theft. And that's another thing that we can work on.
Yeah.
Amen.
Any other questions?
I'd like to say something. I worked
You want to come up to the mic so that they can hear you?
And see you.
And see you.
Hi, I'm Nancy Hansberry Charbonnet. This is my mother, and you saw my daughter earlier. I worked with a real estate agent by the name of Jewel Price. The best way for you to know who she was Marvin Gaye's real estate agent. And I remember she went through a similar situation with timber on some land, and they were chopping down the trees. So I'm going to do my research to find out the lawyer she used, because she did get her land back.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you.
So I just wanted to say that.
Well, do you mind if I say, for the King family, Sophronia made sure she sold most of the property, thousands of acres of land in 1907. So as soon as she got the property, she sold as much of it as she could. So the King descendants are not going to be able to get the property back, but we want restitution for what they suffered through and all of that wealth that they did lose. That's what we're looking for.
Absolutely, and I just want to piggyback off of that. In most of the cases and families that we're working with, there is not an interest to take the land back from the people who are currently residing on the land, but to get fair market value for the land and to also get paid for the violation of their civil and human rights and the loss of business enterprise. And so in all cases, we understand that land can't be returned, but they need to get paid for it.
Amen.
Amen.
And though it may be hard to understand or to believe, most of these situations were supported 100% by governments, from the state to county governments to city administrations. And there were plenty of prohibitors in place by the federal government to prevent these situations from happening.
That's right. One question over here. Two questions.
For the King family, I know that you said that at some point, Ellie King married Sophronia. Okay, was there a marriage certificate for Phoebe and Ellie?
Was there a marriage certificate for Phoebe and Eli?
Well, here's the thing. We have a relative named Charlotte Johnson, and she spoke to me a couple of weeks back, and she said they did get married in Illinois. And she was going to look through her things to see if she could find that information for us. Now, I do have the, I'm trying to turn this off so it doesn't ring again. I do have the 1870 census and the 1880 census. Now, in 1870 census, Phoebe is just known as his wife, his housekeeper. But in 1880, it says that she is his wife. So I don't know if the census is legal enough if we don't find it. But Charlotte did name the church and the minister, so maybe we're going to do a little more research.
Hence the reason why we need attorneys in their legal research team. We've got time for one more question. There's a class coming in. Can you give your last question? You forgot it. Any other questions before we go?
May I say one thing real quick? They did, Phoebe and Eli did meet the qualifications for a common law marriage. And that was pointed out by the United States Supreme Court Justice who wrote their opinion of this case. And he also was the justice, they refused to hear their case. And this justice was also the justice who wrote the opinion for the separate but equal laws that saddled black people for, I don't know, 60 years or more.
Plessy versus Ferguson.
Yes. Thank you for that.
It was very hard for the Kings to find a friend anywhere through the process.